You know, it says in Pasuk at the end of the story of the Mabul in Parshas Noach, so after Noach leaves the Teva, so it says in Pasuk that Hashem makes a promise. Hashem promises, he swears that he's never going to destroy the world. And the Pasuk says the following language, that Yom v'layla lo yishbaisu, that throughout all of world history from that point on, there's always going to be summer and winter and spring and fall, all the seasons. Yom v'layla, there's going to be day and night. Lo yishbaisu, we will not rest. The world is always going to continue on with more energy, more activity, more life, more vigor. Yom v'layla lo yishbaisu. So that's simple. The simple reading of that pasuk is the Rebbeinu Shalom promising that the world will not just fall apart. The world will not rest. In other words, life will continue, life will go on. But Chazal interpret, and Chazal understood there's a deeper meaning of that pasuk, there's a deeper layer of interpretation, which is lo yishbaisu, that it's a command. The Rebbeinu Shalom is turning to humanity, the Bnei Noach, those that are not Jewish people, outside of the Jewish people, and Hashem is commanding them, lo yishbaisu, that the non-Jewish world is prohibited and forbidden from resting on Shabbos. Lo yishbaisu, they're not allowed to keep Shabbos. They have to work on Shabbos. And to such a degree where the Gemara says, Goy sheshavas chayiv misa, that a non-Jew who rests on Shabbos, who keeps Shabbos like a Jew, chayiv misa, that's the capital punishment. So there's a special obligation on the non-Jewish world to specifically not keep Shabbos and to work on the seventh day of the week. Now this is very ironic, where the seventh day of the week for us is Shabbos, which means we don't work, and for the non-Jewish world, it's specifically a day where they have to work. Not only is it interesting, just one day can have such a different experience by two different types of people, but if we think about it, it's a little bit strange, because what is the reason why we rest on Shabbos? What's the simple explanation of Shabbos? So it says in Pasuk that the Rebbeinu Shalom created the world in 6 days. He rested on the seventh, and so to commemorate that fact that there's a creator, and he created the world, we rest on the seventh day as well. This idea of remembering that there's a creator and acknowledging his existence and the fact that he created the world and he's the origin of all things, the non-Jewish people also have to believe in that. That's one of the 7 mitzvahs of Bnei Noach. The first one is to believe in God and to believe in the creator. So if the whole inyan of Shabbos and resting on Shabbos is to connect us to that faith in God and to remind us of the fact that there is a God and he created us, why would the non-Jewish world not be a part of that? If anything, Shabbos should be something that's for everybody. And not only is it not for everyone, it's the opposite. Goy sheshavas chayiv misa. Non-Jew is not allowed to keep Shabbos. So how do we make sense of this? All right, so there's a principle. The Zohar Kodesh mentions this in a number of places, a number of different ways. In the Zohar Kodesh, it says that Shabbos is not just the seventh day of the week. Shabbos is described as Mekayra Dekula, the source and the origin of everything. What does that mean? So there's a famous teaching from the Orach Chaim HaKadosh. The Orach Chaim HaKadosh explains, and he raises in a few places, that the Rebbeinu Shalom made the world in such a way where the chiyus, the energy, the vitality, the life force that the Rebbeinu Shalom invested into reality has a certain limit. At some point, it trickles out. At some point, it loses its vitality, and the world slowly but surely withers away. And the Rebbeinu Shalom said the Orach Chaim HaKadosh invested energy into the world for it to last for 6 days. And after 6 days, automatically the energy levels are depleted. Every Shabbos, what Shabbos is that Shabbos is the root and the source of the vitality, of the chiyus, of the energy and the life force and the existence of the following 6 days. So every Shabbos really is a source of blessing and a source of existence and energy for the coming week. And that's what Shabbos is. So Shabbos is not just a day of rest. Shabbos is really the source of all vitality and all energy and all doing, all activity is all rooted in Shabbos. Shabbos is what brings that into the world. Now, how do we understand that? How does that work? So there's a famous parable that's given by the Svarim to explain this. If you could imagine, let's say you're walking in the woods, or you're going on a trail, and you happen to see a little spring emerging out of the ground. Okay. So very often when you see springs and water that comes out of the ground, so sometimes it's coming very, very strong. And then it's good. You could use that water, you can drink it, you could use it for all good things, it's gewaldig. But sometimes it happens where that same spring, it started off as very strong, but slowly but surely it begins to trickle. It begins to slow down, both in the quantity of the water that emerges is much less. in the intensity of the flow is less, and it begins to become smaller and diminish with time. Now, now you want the spring to go back to its original strength and vitality. So how do you do it? You can't just like schlep water out. The way you do it is very, very simple. You have to dig deeper into the source of the water. If the reason why the water is beginning to trickle slowly and with less volume and less intensity is because clearly there's some blockage in the source of the water, in the root, in the source, so to speak, of the mayan of the spring. Maybe there's some rocks that fell in, there's some sediment there, there's some blockage. So what you have to do, it's not the water's problem. There's some sort of problem with the source. So what you have to do is dig deeper of the source and reconnect the spring to its root, and the more deeply attached, so to speak, and the more flow there is from the very root of the spring, automatically the waters will come out with gusto, with strength, with quality and quantity. It's just all a matter of unearthing the very root and the source of the spring itself. The more the source of the spring is clarified and unearthed and reconnected to the spring, the more the spring will flow healthfully and clearly. That's a parable. What's the lesson from there? When we have the world, the energy of the world flowing from Shabbos into the 6 days of the week, where did that come from? What is the quality? What's the trick? How does Shabbos do that? How does Shabbos just bring more vitality into the world? The answer is similar to that spring. The reason why all of a sudden you see water flowing strongly and with more vigor and with more intensity, it's not the water. It's because the root of the spring and the source of the spring has been activated. The source of the spring has become clarified, unearthed, and reintroduced to the system. And when the origin and the root of the spring is reintroduced to the system, to the water system, then of course the water is going to flow. The reason why there's an increase of energy coming into the world on Shabbos, so much so that the rest of the week, the coming week, is full of energy and vigor, is because what's happening on Shabbos in a deeper level is that the root of all things is becoming unearthed. The system is reconnecting itself to its very root. And what is the root of all things? God Himself. And so Shabbos, therefore, has two dimensions to it. On the one hand, what happens on Shabbos is an unbelievable increase in energy and vitality and productivity that's brought to the world, so much so that it carries over for the coming week. But that's all in the effect of Shabbos. But the cause of what's causing that is the inner dimension of Shabbos, which is a reconnection to the very root of creation, which is God Himself. Because of these two aspects of what's happening on Shabbos, the entire world, in truth, is connecting to Shabbos and celebrating Shabbos. It's just the non-Jewish world is connecting to the effect of Shabbos, the chitzonis, the outer dimension of what's happening on Shabbos, and the Jewish people are connecting to the root, to the cause, to what's the underlying deeper experience of what's happening on Shabbos. What's happening on Shabbos is two things. There is, on the one hand, the realignment of reality with its root, and because of that, what's happening on Shabbos as a result of that is an increase in vitality and energy and productivity. The side of Shabbos, which is the increase of energy and productivity and vitality, that's what the non-Jewish world is connecting to, and they connect to that by not resting on Shabbos. Why are they not allowed to rest on Shabbos? It's because that's how they connect to Shabbos. Their connection to Shabbos is by not resting, because what's happening on Shabbos outwardly is an increase in energy, an increase in vitality. But the Jewish people are connected not just to the external aspect of what's happening on Shabbos. We're connected to why it's happening. And the reason why there's an increase in the flow of the spring is because the root of the spring and the source of the spring is being unearthed and being reconnected to the system. And that's what the Jewish people are involved in Shabbos, which is dafka, to not work and to reconnect to our Creator. So in a certain sense, the entire world is partnering to complete this inning of Shabbos. The Jewish people are involved in the unearthing of the root, and the non-Jewish world are involved in the flow of the water that comes from that. And this is why Shabbos is always seen as a day that's reflective of Yemaisa Mashiach, of the times of Mashiach and post Mashiach. When the Rambam writes that when Mashiach comes, there's not just going to be the Jewish people knowing the truth and the rest of the world left in the dark. Quite the opposite. Mashiach is a redemption for the whole world, that the whole world will become part of serving Hashem. And there'll still be a hierarchy, there'll still be a very big difference between our connection and our service of God versus the rest of the world. But ultimately, we're all going to partner together to serve and to connect to the Creator. Because Shabbos is a reflection of that time period, which is a time where the entire world, both Jew and non-Jew, will be connected in Avodas Hashem, albeit in different levels, different ways. So even Shabbos now reflects that in terms of us and the non-Jewish world all partnering, whether we realize it or not, to be connected to Shabbos. We connect to the root, to the cause, to the pnimis of Shabbos, and the non-Jewish world is connected to the effect, to the chitzainis, to the outer aspect of what Shabbos is. But ultimately, through keeping Shabbos as a Jewish people, we shall be zeicha to see that day of where Mashiach comes, and as the pasuk says, "Kul miyad b'shechem echad," that the whole world will be reintroduced to the truth and to the light of Mashiach. We should be zeicha to experience that with our own